Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the monastery, the open bar of the internet, the world's greatest shit show, and the place where we, the good brothers and sisters of this most holy of temples, seek enlightenment through the drunkest, craziest, and most batshit ways possible. I am your one and only gaming monk, better known as Mildra, and with me, I have a newcomer into the temple, creator of the Mere Animals space opera TTRPG, the one and only Tinselfire. How you doing today, man?
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for coming
I'm
on.
doing pretty good.
So, one of the traditions around here, aside from the drinking, is opening with the humble beginnings, in a sense. So, with that in mind, I'd like you to walk me through your first introduction to role-playing games and what made it stick.
Oh, where to begin? I think my very first experience with role-playing games was Drakar och Demoner Chronopia, a Swedish role-playing game. I think it's been republished in English as Dragonbane pretty recently.
Yeah, I reviewed that version about a month ago.
After that, mostly local Swedish role-playing games like Eon and Neotech, and also Cyberpunk 2020, the one and only Cyberpunk 2020 should I add.
Yeah. Was fantasy among them?
A lot of fancy games, yes.
No,
but mostly sci-fi.
Yeah. I distinctly remember an early entry in the Swedish role-playing game scene just called, well, translated in English, fantasy. just with an exclamation point at the end.
I think that was a little before my time, I think.
It might have been. I do a bit of studying on this kind of thing. Now, with that in mind, with Mere Animals, it is being described as an RPG dealing with anthro animals in a retro SF world. So, since retro SF is a particularly wide net, what I'd like to get down pat is some of the inspirations, some of the influences, the things that would be in the Appendix N, as it were.
Well, like I said, it's a wide net, and it's getting wider by the minute, should I say. I think if we were to narrow down a few main influences, that would be in the work of Steve Galacci, Chris Foss, and Kari Leppänen.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think Kari Leppänen is very well known outside of Scandinavia. He's mostly an artist who's worked on the Phantom.
Mm-hmm.
He's also made a lot of sci-fi of his own.
Yeah.
And more in the anchor vein, Irma Feldman, Steve Galacci is can we call it the seminal work even? And also the Inkal Meta Barons meta series.
Mm-hmm.
Just get a rough idea of the vibe here.
Yeah. It's important to establish that kind of thing since science fiction or fantasy or the like can go in a lot of different directions. It is a very wide net to cast. Even something like space opera. But one of the things I did notice, and part of this may be due to using a 2d6 approach, but it does seem that Traveler was a significant influence.
Oh yes, Traveler was, should we say, the greatest and the least influence at the same time. Because when I started signing Mere Animals, I picked a name quite recently. Often I pick the game first. Often I pick a name very early, but this time I picked it very recently.
Mm-hmm.
But when I started signing Mere Animals, I started out with what I like to call the vision of Traveler, as I imagined the game to work out. Because what first drew me in Traveler when I saw it was the a 2d6 approach and a very consistent, very low-tech approach, where you have very simple, very consistent resolution across the board. But once I actually got in Traveler, I figured out, right, there are actually a lot of exceptional cases here, and there's, not as much synergy as I'd like there to be. So yeah, Traveler is both a very great and the greatest and least influence at the same time.
Mm-hmm. But it definitely seems that one of the things that you took from it was that 2d6 system, as well as having something akin to a life path system.
Oh yeah, the life path system is very much inspired by the term system in Traveler. Although, well, right now it's more inspired than based on. The only thing remaining from Traveler right now is the 4-year increments. And, well, as I say, the 4-year increment system because, well, it's very easy to divide by 6.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can certainly get that. And that 2d6 approach is, from what I was able to see, it seems that is the primary die resolution that someone's going to see throughout the game is a 2d6 plus modifiers, or just straight 2d6.
Ah, yes. 2d6 plus modifiers against the target value.
Mm-hmm.
Much in the same vein as what's it called? Yeah, Interlock.
Mm-hmm. All right. Now,
so Cyberpunk Fusion.
Yeah.
That line of games.
Mm-hmm. Now, when it comes to this being essentially a space opera setting, one of the big elephants in the room that has to be addressed is FTL travel. You know, whether it's used, whether it isn't, and how it works. In what you had sent me, it had said that FTL travel is possible and is very common, but is dangerous. So how does it end up working? Is it a 1-week rule like in Traveler? Is it a jumping between points a la Wing Commander and Fading Suns? Is it something in between?
Neither. The way FTL works here is that you have what I'd call pseudo FTL, where travel between stars works exactly like travel between planets, just on a much more brutal and much more dangerous scale. So, well, if you look at the cover illustration I sent you, most of the ships look like they're sandblasted, and, well, that's very much intentional. Because the way things work is that when you're flying between stars, you're basically flying through toothpaste. So, because of danger associated with traveling between stars, travel between stars is kind of limited to, let's say, roughly the same vibes as international travel in the early 20th century. So, these are possible. Things are even routine, but, well, it's not convenient, and it's not safe.
Yeah. So, would you say it's analogous to international travel on Earth before things like the Concorde started to get headway?
Yeah, I think golden age of aviation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I could see that. And, well, worst case scenario, you could have somebody have the equivalent of the TU-104 as their method of travel.
Oh, in a worst case scenario. And I'm trying to go with the vibe that ships are in kind of gilded age, where, well, you have ships that look very sophisticated, but things are pretty rickety under the surface. So
Yeah, I've been on my fair share of prop planes that I consider it a miracle that they even got off the ground. It's not that they weren't poorly maintained. It's just some pilots are crazier than others, or sometimes turbulence happens.
Oh yeah.
Uh,
I don't fly a lot, but I've had the benefit, and we have a retired fighter pilot in the family
mhm.
that uses a military advisor, and well, uh, pretty much every design sketch I've shown him, he's just oh, well, I recognize this. I've flown this.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and he used to fly in the '60s, so
Mhm. Yeah. Now, with that in with that kind of thing in mind, uh, when it comes to when it comes to being on ships, there were plenty of images that you had sent that depicted some kind of ship combat. And ship combat is something that is a tricky affair for a lot of games to handle. How
to
do
say the
you
least.
since this is a game that's trying to be semi light on crunch, how do you handle ship combat in a way that keeps that particular motif?
The first ship combat is still very, very much in development,
Hmm.
but the system I'm working on right now uses a pod-based system where you basically have two different ranges.
Hmm.
You have a close range or you have standoff range. And because distances, distances and velocities are on a completely ridiculous scale once you're out in deep space. So once you're at a certain range, it doesn't really change much during an engagement.
Hmm. Yeah,
Although, what I'm trying to model right now
mhm,
is the problem of the speed of information, where
mhm,
you only have you have relativistic effects, where well you can never really predict in advance where the target is, because standard range is at fractions of light seconds.
and I think you had a bit of an implication that while FTL is common, um, getting interstellar exchange of information is a bit trickier.
Oh yes, because well, the ship can travel faster than light, but the information doesn't.
Uh,
So that if you want information to get across faster than light, you have to carry it along physically.
yeah, so what you essentially have is a reincarnation of old school mail carriers or things like the old Pony Express here in the States.
Oh yeah. Or if you want traveler analog, the X-boat system.
Yeah, I could certainly see that. Now, one of the other things that I found kind of interesting is in how you handle skill on a range of one to five with their modifiers. When it Now, games like Traveler and games like Cyberpunk, they are known and in some cases infamous for having a very large skill list. Is that something that's going to be carried over into this game, or have you made some inroads to try and parse down the total amount of potential skills?
Oh yes, it's going to be carried over. But um, I'm aware that there have been developments since,
Hmm.
and that well, having a skill for absolutely everything isn't strictly necessary. I mean, if we're going all the way back to, let's say, Dungeons and Dragons Second Edition, uh, there's even a warning to Dungeon Master out there. Yep, you don't need to invent the roof fashion skill. I mean, nobody needs that. But I try to both keep a large skill list, but also to group as many related skills as possible into single skills.
Mhm.
Because, well, on the one hand, I'm aware that you need to keep it slim. You need to keep it slim down, keep it accessible, but also I like having a fairly large skill list. It helps with a retro vibe.
Yeah. I can see both ends of the spectrum. I will admit that when it came to certain editions of D&D, I took the piss out of the fact that run, jump, climb, and swim were all separate skills.
Oh yeah.
Which, when I did that, I did get some folks saying, "Well, those things are separate skills in the real world," and I'm like, this is less to do with realism and more to do with logistics. Because you're only going to get so much investment into skills. And every new skill you add is a new one to sink those points into. Even if you're not using points per se. I'm just using that colloquially. And because of that, when you only have so many points to spend on skills in a given game, having it sink into these separate things, or having a bunch of skills that are very situational, it ends up interfering with the experience.
Yeah, well, that's one thing I really didn't like from Cyberpunk. So, well, there are a lot of skills that just do one thing.
Yeah.
For example, I really didn't like how specific Cyberpunk was about personal grooming, for example. I mean, there's a long list of specifics about exactly what this one thing does, but it only does exactly this.
And who knows how often that's going to show up in the course of a session.
Not exactly, no. I mean, you're not going to have a session where one character just shaves for 5 hours straight.
Not unless they've got like a beard like ZZ Top used to have.
Oh. Alright, fair point. But when it comes to skills like athletic skills like swimming, jumping, etc., well, I've taken the easy way out here since all characters are animals and, well, all mammals float.
Mm-hmm.
So, well, it can just be assumed that everybody can swim and, well, everybody can jump.
Yeah.
I think I even specified on one point that since everybody are animals, everybody has some more specific skills as well, like knowing how to put out fire and things.
Mm-hmm.
It's been a bit of an in-joke among friends that discuss design with that fur is flammable. There needs to be rules of on fire.
Yeah. And anything is flammable if you apply enough fire.
And sugar sticks to fur.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and now speaking of that, one of the other things that stuff like Traveler is known for, in some cases rather infamous, is how lethal it can get. Now, sometimes that lethality can even begin at character creation. There's one of the long-running memes has been how you can die during character in the process of making your own damn character. But there is nevertheless a degree of lethality when it comes to Traveler. And when it comes to mere animals, do you plan on having a similar level of lethality through the wound system that you have?
Oh yes, I'm planning to keep combat extremely lethal.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm also planning to keep it lethal for the sake of that. I'm intending the gameplay to be mostly conversational and social.
Mm-hmm.
So the combat is, well, possible, but not ideal under any circumstances.
Mm-hmm.
So I think I submitted a weapon list. And as you can see here, almost all weapons are capable of killing an average character in one hit.
Mm-hmm.
And this is very much by design.
Yeah. Yeah, I could see that, and I'm guessing in that situation that being able to not get hit is far more important than getting hit with some kind of armor.
There's a lot of focus on hit evasion, yes.
Mm-hmm.
Well, some creators are tankier than others, of course.
Yeah, which certainly
For
makes
example,
sense. Now, is it a case where most civilizations are using energy weapons, or are solid projectile weapons still more of a thing?
oh, there's a combination. There, projectile weapons and direct energy weapons both exist with different applications.
Mm-hmm.
So that
Yeah,
let's see.
I could see it, and I'm guessing a similar thing is going down when it comes to melee weapons. Which I could see in this kind of thing being a very high risk, high reward kind of thing.
For projectile weapons, almost all projectile weapons are programmable,
Mm-hmm.
so that most of the guns are computerized and program the ammo as you fire it for different functions, such as tracing, flight control, scatter shots, and all the standard stuff.
When you describe it like that, what immediately comes to mind is the Lawgiver pistol in the 2000 AD universe in Judge Dredd.
Ooh, no, that's a good point. The primary inspiration actually was the computerized AK-47 in Elysium. But yeah, now to mention it, big fan of 82,000 myself.
Mm-hmm.
So kind of surprised I didn't think of that.
Yeah.
Must be an influence in the back of my head.
We can chalk it up to convergent creativity.
Ah, I like that.
Especially since in doing so, it means that you can have, and I'm guessing this was one of the reasons you leaned into this. One can have one particular firearm be multi-role, so that they don't have to carry a bunch of different ones, unless they absolutely want to.
Exactly. And meanwhile, direct energy weapons are incredibly lethal, yes, but they have very little flexibility.
Mm-hmm. Fire and forget.
The only flexibility they have is that they have, for lack of a better description, volume control, where the effect can be tuned depending on a risk and reward.
Yeah.
So you can tune the weapon for higher yield, but also a higher risk of misfire with every shot.
And possibly, I'm guessing a risk of having the thing get too hot or blow up in your face.
Blow your whiskers right off your face.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm down with that. I enjoy giving my players overpowered but unsafe equipment. And speaking of, since we're dealing with potentially being in space and dealing with different types of planets, do you plan on having any rules regarding how different levels of gravity may affect players?
Very, very light rules on that.
Yeah, I'm not expecting a whole scientific digression, but just some races being better adapted to high G or low G, that kind of thing.
Yeah, I'm thinking of going just with 3 different categories of gravity: low, high, medium gravity, etc.
Mm-hmm. So
And just having a simple dice modifier for each.
yeah, I'd imagine high G would be something like Jupiter. Um, Medium would probably be something like Earth level gravity. Um, how low would low G be? Would that be like um, gravity? Would that be like in space or something? Or some? Actually, not in space because that'd be 0 G. But what?
Yeah, low gravity would be uh, between 0 down to 1, 0.5 down to 0.1 G.
All right, so probably lunar level gravity then.
Yeah, I think lunar level is 1.8 or something. No, 0.18 or something.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that would certainly make sense. Now, with that in mind, given the given what I had seen regarding the the setup that you have, I am curious if advancement is going to be a direct XP spend kind of thing. You know, you gain XP through adventures and the like, and then spend that directly on advancing your character. What I call XP as currency.
No, I'm thinking of having a training-based system. As in, players spend a certain amount of time in game improving skills, and takes a certain time frame to improve a skill.
Yeah, I could certainly see that.
Yeah,
Kind of expanding on the whole vocational term thing that's in character creation.
yeah, and also I'm not a big fan of points-based systems myself. I think they have a place, but they don't work in this type of game with the vibes I'm going for.
Mm-hmm.
Well, no, I've tried to avoid using the specific word points as much as possible in the game vocabulary.
Mm-hmm. I could certainly see that. So, you know, with all of that in mind, uh, when it comes to the setting, which you're referring to as the Great Compass, uh, within the major power blocks, is it a case where some of them are going through open conflict, or is it a case where things are relatively stable but could go off with the right circumstance?
Things are, should say, perennially conflict ridden.
I get because when I looked at this sort of major power block setup, for whatever reason, what ended up coming to mind for me is um, the state of affairs just before World War One kicked off, which was a powder keg that was just waiting for the right spark.
Excuse me, I had to grab a drink.
No worries.
Alright, the situation in the galaxy is stable, but perennially conflict ridden. Most obviously, the aggregate is, in all words but one, parasitic on the other factions. And they made it more or less a base of their existence to start a war every 10 or 20 years or so, just to bring the others to the negotiating table.
Mm-hmm.
The Savitari are a much more splintered faction than any of the others. They used to dominate the galaxy for about 500 years, up until 300 years ago, and, well, were the only true superpower of setting during that time.
Mm-hmm.
And, well, the different rump states that remain of them haven't really found a new identity yet. And then there's Salt League, which, well, they dig. They only dig.
Which I could certainly see that. And in addition to it sounds like in addition to those major powers, there's a bunch of independent colonies, pirate kingdoms, bandit nations, and the like that certainly are large enough to have their own spot in the Great Compass, but aren't large enough to be taken seriously by the Big Four.
Oh yes. I plan to include descriptions for maybe 20 different minor factions.
Mm-hmm.
But mostly this serves to illustrate that because of the way interstellar civilization works, the different factions don't control every world in their own sphere of influence. But, well, if the referee likes, they can basically design a faction of their own and put it, well, anywhere in the Great Compass.
Mm-hmm.
Because minor factions can exist and flourish pretty much anywhere.
Yeah. And the reason why I brought up bandit kingdoms in that is I could see, say a group of pirates taking over a world that is in a situation where the power block that would normally occupy that world is in the state of we could go in there and take them out, but the cost in manpower and time compared to other matters is not sufficient to warrant that being a good idea. I.e., it would be cheap to start a fight, but it would be too expensive to see it through.
And also there are a lot of ideological obstacles.
Mm-hmm.
Well, for example, the aggregate might just go in regardless of the cost, because, well, it's about sending a message that, well, the prince suffers no rivals, the queen suffers no rival, or, well, conversely, the queen is magnanimous.
Mm-hmm. Which...
Or the communion could just go in and just declare out, well, this is a threat to democracy. We have to get them out of the way now.
Mm-hmm.
Or, well, we could do something, but, well, the collateral damage would be unacceptable.
Yeah. And when I looked at the Communion of Worlds, there's a part of me that wonders if on some level, because of the religious standard of self-realization that it is described as having, that it is somewhat taking a shot at the Federation from Star Trek and how it can appear arrogant, if I'm being honest.
Oh yeah. I got a love-hate relationship with Star Trek. Mostly love.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I have picked some influences from the Federation in designing Communion, but actually the Communion started as an attempt to create the most generic sci-fi military faction ever. And, well, then I just gradually failed away from that objective until I got something I liked better.
Mm-hmm. Which is fair. It's kind of hard to... There's a kind of contradiction in trying to write generic, just in general, because well, the writer is not a generic person. And when it but even within that, with something like Traveler, you had the notion of people being free traders as a kind of premise to get the player characters into the setting. With Mere Animals, do you have a similar kind of opening premise as a way to get the ball rolling for a given table, or is that still being worked on?
I'm going with slightly different approach there.
Mm-hmm.
That's more quest based, which is why I spent a lot of time developing a River Forge,
Mm-hmm.
which is one of the largest space stations, largest, oldest, probably most chaotic space stations of the settings, which sits at a place called the Galactic Trisector, where three of the major power blocks intersect.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason I spent so much time developing it is because I think it's important to have a quest hub in the way of, say, Sigil or Waterdeep from Dungeons and Dragons.
Mm-hmm. Could you also apply Night Cities to that kind of thing?
I have a soft spot for Night City, but I wouldn't say Riverforge has the same vibe, so that the city always wins in the end.
Mm-hmm.
Although, well, there are some slightly shadier things going on the further back in the station yet, but, well, that's another story.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I could certainly get that. Now, do you within the coming months, do you plan on putting out a demo for Mere Animals?
I have plans, yes, but I don't have a schedule.
Mm-hmm.
I unfortunately don't have the benefit of making my own schedule at the moment, but I'll be making announcements on Blue Sky as I go.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can certainly get that, and I will put up the Blue Sky link in the description when I can.
Excellent.
But because of how early this is, I mean, this isn't even this is in the pre-alpha stage, I believe.
Oh yeah, this is basically the barest alpha stage possible.
Mm-hmm. So it would be, because sometimes I ask about potential page counts, but I think this is a little too early for that.
Actually, not too early. I plan to keep the crunch page count down under 50 pages.
Mm-hmm. Which I could certainly see.
Under 50 pages, and that's counting all character generation data.
Mm-hmm. Which is interesting, since we mentioned Traveler quite a bit, and a good chunk of its core book is dedicated to its character creation through the life path setup. That was part of the reason why when I covered Mongoose Traveler 2nd edition, I had said it wasn't the best idea to just have one core book. It should have been split into at least 2 or 3.
Not sure I read that. Not sure I read that version Traveler. I most look at the very, very, very oldest versions.
Yeah,
1978, 1980.
Yeah, the GDW era. Which I tried to. If I had a nickel for every time a GDW game went through a bunch of system hopping over 50 years, I'd have 2 nickels.
Which isn't a lot, but weird and happened twice.
Yeah, both of them I've covered in some form or another, but I can certainly see that, especially if you're going with a lighter affair, you're not going to need as much page count for character creation as Traveler did.
Yeah.
I definitely get the feeling you're not going to need it split into 3 books.
I don't know. I think each life path should take up at most a full page spread.
Mm-hmm.
And at the moment, I have 8 life paths in total and 8 character families.
Mm-hmm.
So, all in all, 8 plus 16, 24 pages for character generation.
Which, that's pretty standard sized. Especially for a medium light kind of game as far as crunch goes. But with that in mind, I'll certainly be looking forward to seeing how it develops. And I do want to give my sincere thanks to you for being open to come all the way from my monastery and enjoy the madness that happens around here.
Always.
And anytime you see fit to return, the door is always open. As I often say around here, drinking is not mandatory, but it is encouraged.
I'll toast to that.
And of course, a sincere thanks goes out to everyone who took the time out of their schedule to come onto the show and enjoy the madness. And there will be plenty more where that came from, as there always is here, on the open bar of the internet. But until then, on behalf of the good brothers present and not present, my name is Mildra, I am your gaming monk. Stay fucking frosty, everybody!